Last week, Conservative candidate Pierre Poilievre said he would be tougher on repeat offenders. He proposed a 3 strikes and you're out law that would stop those convicted, he says, of 3 serious offenses from getting bail, probation, parole, or even house arrest. Now, it's something the United States has tried in the past to address crime. University of Winnipeg criminology professor Michael Weinrath broke down the law for us last week from his perspective. He believes that these kinds of laws are not effective.
The United States went from, a relatively middle-of-the-road incarceration rate to become the world leader in imprisoning people. So it had a huge impact on the number of people who were incarcerated. There were a number of studies that were done and have been done on that law and similar types of laws. And, it never actually affected the crime rate significantly. And so, to be honest, I was actually a bit surprised because if you lock enough people up long enough, you'd think it would have some significant effect on the crime rate.
Well, my next guest works with inner city youth and is hoping for more of a community-informed approach to crime, but he does say we need to do something to address the problem of repeat serious offenders. Kent Dueck is executive director and founder of Inner City Youth Alive, which helps children and youth in Winnipeg's North End area, but also all over the city. Kent is also a member of our community advisory board, and he's in studio with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So why don't we start with your reaction? I know you had headphones on. You were listening to what Mr. Weinrath had to say about this 3 strikes and you're outlaw in Canada. What do you think of what he said there? That to his surprise, didn't bear out in statistically helping with the crime rates.
I react kind of in theory. Practice is the same as theory, and in practice, theory sort of gets its butt kicked every time. And so my reaction is that if you do the simple sort of practical thoughts around, you say, okay, we have one individual that's committed 15 violent offenses and is still out in the community. If you're going to do the game theory on what do you think is going to happen next, you don't need to perform a study to know what's going to happen. And we see that in the community. We see that those individuals, it's a small percentage, something like 1% of criminals commit 65% of the crime. And so, you can have these studies, but I'd be very curious to look at kind of how they were conducted. But in practical terms on the front lines, you do know what happens if an individual who is a continuous problem in the community is finally contained. I wish, we have these sort of ham-fisted extremes when we talk about this thing. We have the conservatives sort of lock them up and throw away the key, which is, I think, not an accurate depiction of what they're trying to do. And then you have the liberals kind of rose-colored glasses approach. And I wish we had sort of some sane mid-ground where we could, when individuals are an ongoing problem in the community, that we could sort of, strangely enough, motivated by a sense of love and care for them, their family, the people that they've done harm to, if we could contain and actually treat and care for those individuals. But it requires us to, like right now, here we are in a federal election, and we've got these 2 extremes to choose from.
So let's talk about the other option on the table, because we mentioned Pierre Poilievre and the 3 strikes, but Liberal leader Mark Carney has announced his party's public safety platform late last week. So in it covered areas like guns and hate crimes. Carney did say his party would put the onus on some repeat offenders to prove that they deserve to be released on bail. But right now, a prosecutor has to prove an accused doesn't deserve bail. I was going to ask you what you think of that approach, but you kind of already answered, Kent, where you're feeling like there's what's needed is somewhere in the middle to kind of wrap around somebody who would be a repeat offender. And you're not seeing that in either of the platforms.
I don't buy that from Carney's camp. I don't buy that that's going to happen. I've been banging on about this for 5 years. Marcy, sorry you've had to put up with me. I've been saying it's not working, and we have to ring a bell and say we have to stop. We have to stop this. But so I don't buy that that's how it's going to go down. I think that's rhetoric at the that he's doing right now during election.
So what's the difference between sort of when we talk about root causes, right? What might have somebody arrive at the place where they become a repeat offender? If you look at their history, what's the difference between strengthening that for a person, so maybe they never get to that stage, and what you're talking about, which is they're already at that stage, maybe they're identified as a repeat offender, like. What do you do then, in that case? Because then you're not sort of rebuilding the building blocks, but you're needing to respond to a problem that's in front of you.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think on the prevention front, so there's this kind of I think the Liberals would sort of tout themselves as being smart on crime, and so then that looks at sort of systems theories in a long view, and I think that long view, it has a certain degree of wisdom to it, but in the short term, you still have all this damage you have to ameliorate and deal with, right? And so I think that root causes, we, like in our programming, we have a program, Step Up Construction, where we have youth that have been involved in gangs have an alternative. So for one, we have to build those systems where, because violence it's not just sort of one thing. People don't get into it for just one reason. It's multivariate, but you have to give them off ramps, and so I think on the prevention front, that's critical. But root cause, it's often learned. You see it in a maybe in a family where it's kids are kind of growing up in that context, and then it's something that that just kind of gets lived out in the community then.
When you're saying that you don't buy it from the Liberals, I don't want to dip too far into this road, but I know that you feel like the Liberals really dropped the ball with two bills specifically, C5 and C75. So what would those have done?
Yeah, well, I mean, they had good intent. So C75 was intended to kind of get people through the system a little faster, and C5, I think it reduced the number of 14 violent offenses, downgraded them. And so the way that works then is, I just recently heard from somebody that an individual had committed 5 armed robberies, like with a weapon, and was released each time. And so what I hear, there's, I have my sources. I have to keep them, to my chest. But I heard from somebody in policing. They have a form they fill out when they catch an individual who's committed these violent offenses, and they can tick every box perfectly, and they can put that thing, and they can take that person in, and they'll still be released. And so it's just mayhem. Then you just have that individual, it's just because violence is a cycle. And if you don't interrupt the cycle at any point, it escalates.
Are the young people in your world talking about this? I mean, how does this come up in their conversations, those that you work with?
So often, and it's just a pressure now in the community. I often talk about there's just sort of a low grade kind of hypervigilance that's taking place in the community where everybody's just on edge. Just this last Friday, a woman in the community, 20-year-old woman, begged me to walk her home. Middle of the afternoon Friday, a block and a half from our building. And I did it. And her dad's waiting outside. And I was thinking about it walking away, and I was going, why did this young woman need me to walk her home? And it's there's that fear in the community. Just people are feeling vulnerable.
Kent, obviously we'll have you back throughout the weeks ahead as we get closer to Election Day, but thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Kent Dueck, the Executive Director and founder of Inner City Youth Alive.